We're going to talk about perimeter controls, and we're going to talk about perimeter controls in two parts. Part one, how do we protect the existing infrastructure through inlet protection, and how do we protect green infrastructure? How do we make sure that our project doesn't add pollutant loading to the existing storm system? In part two, we're going to talk about how to put a boundary around the outside of your project. How do we make sure that we keep the inside in and the outside out? We don't want other people's stuff coming to us, and we don't want to donate any of our material outside of our project. When we're protecting our existing infrastructure, it's really important to implement inlet protection. You guys have heard of these things called witches' hats or sed sacks. There's lots of different filters that are out there, and we're going to talk through some of those, but I also like to have things above the surface. I don't want to have to chase torn off filters that are in sump lines going down sump lines. I want to make sure that I have the ability to take the majority load of material going into that structure away at the surface with a push broom and a dustpan or a sweeper truck rather than in the filter. I want something at the surface that's going to keep the mass loading at the surface where I can get at it rather than getting into confined space and having to clean out or chase filters that are moving down sump lines. A typical industry practice is to use the extra piece of sed fence, but what's really important to understand is that sed fence or silt fence is not filter fabric. And so if you put sed fence down and you put the catch basin lid on top of it, it's going to blind off and it's going to create a puddle, right? So how do you fix puddles? Well, you poke a hole. So we graduate, we get more sophisticated from that experience, and we go out and get ourselves a witch's hat or a sed sack or a diaper, whatever you call it. But our jurisdiction had a really bad experience with that extra flap that was outside the sediment sack that was folded over the catch basin lid, and it caused that catch basin to blind off like leaves do in the fall. And so our jurisdiction said, oh, you got to trim all that excess fabric off. And we go to replace it, and we pick up the grate, and where does it go? And where do we go when we try to chase it? There are so many different models that are out there for you to look at. There are filters with support structures. There are filters with replaceable sediment sacks on them. So don't get hung up with the only one or only one type or model that's out there. There are several types that will accomplish the goals or the outcomes for your project you're looking for on your site. We will also show you some of the above ground surface loading reduction BMPs that are out there in the market that can go along with the filter that's in the sump. So as you can see, catch basin inserts, there are all kinds of different models that are out there. It's probably the greatest example of capitalism in the erosion control market. If there's one that you don't like, somebody in their garage has made a new one to take it to market. So don't get stuck with one kind or the other. What you're going to see with all of these that I have out here today, these are all the soft versions. They also make structured versions, the ones that have actual frames and things like that for a lot of your catch basins. They're made from a geosynthetic fabric, a non-woven geosynthetic fabric, so a heavier duty weed fabric that allows for filtration but will trap the sediment. They can also have additional features, like this one has oil filtration capability to it, so it'll suck the oil out of the water. What's common to most all sediment filters is that they have an overflow. Now you can get these without overflows, but you want to make sure that this overflow capability is available to you so that if this blinds off because it's got too much sediment into it or leaves or debris catch into it, that this will be able to bypass and not create flooding. Not only are there some of these loose fabric ones that you install and you'll have this fabric as you install it, the fabric will sit outside the catch basin, and maintaining them you have to actually grab these loops so that you don't lose this filter into the sump. To help support that, there are some other catch basin inserts that are out there that have an expandable wire rim to them. So you can see that this rim is going to set on the catch basin lip itself, and then you put the grate on top of it, and when you go to remove the grate, this will not fall back in. So there's a lighter gauge frame as well as a heavier gauged frame one. These are expandable. You can change the shapes of them. They have the overflows just like the other ones do. This model, actually, if your sediment sack fills up with sediment, stops filtering anymore, you can actually take it off and replace it. Again, there's a variety of different options that are available to you in terms of these catch basin filters. They all require maintenance. You need to make sure that you're inspecting them and they're not plugging up with sediment. And these are above filter units that will help support the investment that you've made into the filter. These will help take the majority load away from those structures. It all depends on what the size of the structure is as to which one of these is going to be most appropriate for you. But there are some that will adhere to the surface of the catch basin. This has a magnet to it, so it'll actually just lock onto the surface. There are other ones that you zip tie to the surface of the grate. This is made out of horsehair. This is called Bloxam. And you can either zip tie this down or you can use sandbags to hold it down. And this is a pre-filter to the catch basin insert on the inside. Again, another type that you anchor to the corners of the grate, and this is a pre-filter to the filter in the subgrate. And then there are other structures that are meant for what we call recessed curb inlets. Like you see behind me here, you can see the slot. And you can actually put these up around the outside of the structure of the catch basin. This will block the sediment from going in there. You can remove that with a shovel. This is for a recessed curb inlet. Please install it this way, not like this. And then finally, there are these other ones that are out that are these mats, and you take this pocket and you infill this with washed rock, and this becomes a diversion dike. This is oftentimes used for a curb, and then the catch basin filter is underneath this. The other thing we need to be very conscious of about moving forward is protecting our low impact development BMP features. Oftentimes these are in our right-of-way areas. LID, low impact development, is a philosophy that we're incorporating into new development. That low impact development really is taking the volume that stormwater creates and trying to figure out how to get rid of it back into the ground like it did in a natural state before development. And we're creating best management practices, LID BMPs, like bioretention facilities, like permeable hard surfaces, like permeable concrete or pavers or green roofs, to take some of what the volume is away from the surface and get it back into the ground. Now, for those features to function in longevity, they have to be able to migrate the water into the ground. If you're doing construction activity next to one of those LID BMPs and you're disturbing the soil and allowing it to wash into the permeable asphalt, or you have a landscaper that may put a stockpile of bark right next to the permeable sidewalk, that permeable hard surface isn't going to be permeable for very long, and your bioretention facility may experience scouring or washing away of the magic material that has been put in there to do pollutant removal in the long term. Whether it be low impact development or even subgrade treatment systems, things like vaults with the filters in them that you allow a lot of highly turbid water to go into these systems, it'll cost a lot more money at the end of the project to get those systems back to their working function and replace the magic meter that they're operating under to take the bad stuff out of stormwater. So you need to protect that existing infrastructure as you do your project. Every time you see an LID BMP on one of your projects, you need to treat it like a body of water. Stay out of it. Don't let people walk around in it and compact the soil. And don't let dirty water go into it that can blind it off, just like a catch basin filter.